Hi, this is John, and today I'm going to be talking to you about JavaScript. So whereas HTML is the view of the page, like the text hi, CSS is the design of the page, like this pink box, JavaScript is the way you interact with the page. For example, when I click this button, it changes the HTML or the text of the page. This is done with JavaScript. Looking at our code, JavaScript is written between script tags, and much like CSS, it can be linked to an external file, which I did with myscript.js. Keeping it an external file is a good habit to have, as it separates your JavaScript from your HTML, allowing your code to be easier read and to maintain. It also increases page loading times. You'll also notice that I place my script tags at the bottom of the body. You can place it in the head or at the top of the body, but often it's a good habit to keep it at the bottom. This is because whenever you load and process any HTML and it encounters any JavaScript, it stops and begins loading the JavaScript. This can affect your user experience and delay the page from loading. All web browsers have developer tools that allow you to access, compile, and execute JavaScript. I'm using Google Chrome, and by right-clicking this page and clicking Inspect, it brings us our developer tools. In Console, we can perform JavaScript equations. So for example, we can do 2 plus 2, and it comes up with the answer 4. You'll notice that I added a semicolon at the end. This acts as a period ending the equation. You can do the same thing without a semicolon, and it comes up with the same answer. However, if we were to do 2 different equations on the same line, an error is caught. And that's because JavaScript in Console doesn't know where to end and begin with the equation. So we can do the same thing this time with semicolons, and it runs it without an error. However, in Console it's only running the last equation. That's why it comes up with 5. We can do subtraction, which is written with a hyphen, multiplication, which is written with asterisk, and division, which is written with a /. There's another arithmetic equation we can perform, and this is called modulo. And this is written with a %sign. And you'll notice the answer is 1. Modulo is the remainder after division. So 2 goes into 5 2 times, and the remainder is 1. So we can do it again with 7 modulo 3, and the remainder is 1 again, because 3 goes into 7 2 times, so the remainder of 1. 12 modulo 4 is 0, because 4 goes into 12 perfectly. Computers store and process data, and data is anything that's meaningful to the computer. We already used numbers, which is a common type of data, and another common type of data is called strings. Strings are a series of characters surrounded by quotes. So John is a string surrounded by double quotes. You can also use single quotes. However, if you were to begin a string with a single quote, it has to end with a single quote. And this is done because if I were to add an apostrophe within the string, it wouldn't know where to begin and end this string. So that's why we would add double quotes. And vice versa, if we were using double quotes within the string, we would begin it with single quotes to escape the double quotes. We can also add properties to strings. So if I were to type John, we can add a property by typing dot length, and this gives us the number of characters within that string, which is 4. It's very important to notice the difference between a string and a number, because within a string you can have any set of characters. So I can put a 2, which is very different from 2. If we want to keep and store data, then we would use variables. Variables are declared by typing the keyword var, naming it anything you want, I'll call mine my name, and then assigning it a value. I wrote my name in camel case, and camel case is a collection of words that are compound without the use of spaces. Also, every single word within it is capitalized except for the very first. So my name is John would be written in camel case. We can also name our variable with the use of underscores. So we could do var my name equals Kevin. Now if we want to perform a mathematical equation with our variables, we can do var a equals 10, var b equals 12, and then adding a third variable, var result equals a plus b, calling result will give us the answer 22. And it takes that stored a, which is 10, and the stored b, which is 12, adds it together, giving us 22. Now we can change the value of this variable by just typing var results equals 23. And giving us results gives us the answer 23. We can also just type result equals 24, changing it again, and it changes it. However, when you type var before it, it defines it for you, and it's in good habit to keep that for you and other programmers to see. We can do the same thing with strings. Let's say var a equals hello. Var b equals world. Var results equals a plus b. We can call it results, and it will give us a string together. Now this is an example of string concatenation, and you'll notice that it combined the words because string concatenation doesn't add spaces for you. We can also concatenate a string using the variable again, myString, adding what are you, an addition sign, up to, and then calling it, and it will give us the concatenated string all together. And again, I added my own space because string concatenation doesn't add any spaces for you. We can also type our variable, and using the plus equal sign, give us another addition. So let's say nothing. And it gives us the entire string this time with another additional string added to the end. So far we've covered numbers as a data type, and we've also covered strings as a data type. Another type of data is called array. And arrays are a collection of items enclosed by square brackets. So we'd start our array with a square bracket, and then we'd put our first item. And each item has a comma after it to separate them. And now to call it, we type array, and it would give us all the items in the array. And you'll also notice that I put two variables in it, so that gave us 2 numbers and 3 strings. If we want a specific item in this array, we type the array's name, array, or the variable's name, and we type the number we want. So I typed 1, and that gave us the second item in the array, and it didn't give us the first. And that's because arrays are 0 indexed, meaning the first item in the array is actually 0, and example 2, this string, would actually be 1. So that's why it gave us 2. Now there's a number of things we can do in this array. We can also add the property .length like we did with strings. So we could do array.length. And that would give us the number of items in this array, which is 5. And there's a bunch of other properties we can add, such as .sort, so we can sort them alphabetically or anything else. And it's also important to note that strings, if we wanted to type myString, are actually arrays in themselves, meaning they're indexed. So if I wanted to type my string square bracket 0, if we wanted to find the first character, it would actually give us the very first character in this array, which would be H. It's important to note that you can't actually change the content of a string. For example, if I were to type the variable of the string, how are you? And I wanted to change the first letter H, so index 0 to B, and then I call the string once again, it doesn't change the first letter to B, and that's because strings are actually immutable, meaning they can't be altered or changed. Now let's say we wanted to find the third character in the string, so once again, string 2, and that would give us the W in how. Now if we want to find the last character, we would type the variable string, square bracket, string dot length minus 1. And this would give us the very last character, which is a question mark. Basically, it's taking our string, counting the amount of characters within it, and then subtracting 1, giving us the last one. So if we wanted to find the third to last one, we'd type string dot length minus 3. And that would give us O in U, the third to last character. Objects are another type of data, and they're very similar to arrays in that they're both a collection of items. You would write an object with curly braces to start it off with. I'll put my first item, which would be name, and let's do John. Let's do hair color as our second. And let's do nice as our third. End it with a bracket. And let's actually rename this object as person. And let's call person. And that would give us this object. You'll notice that when I write my object, I would do quotes, this, then I would do a colon, and then the value. And these are called key value pairs. So name would be the key with a colon, and then John would be the value. If I want to access these, in an array normally you do square bracket 0 square bracket to find the very first one. But in objects you actually use dot notation. So it would be person dot name. And that would give us John, which is the value. If I wanted to do hair color, which is this key, person dot hair color. And same thing with nice, person dot nice, and that would give us true as well. Now let's say I didn't write hair color in camel case, and it was 2 words with a space. We can also use something called bracket notation, and this gives us access to items that have spaces in them. So I could do person, square bracket, hair color, quotes, and square bracket. And that would give us this value brown. And you can do the same thing for name, person, name, and the same thing for nice as well. Now we can also change the value of certain keys within our object. So if we wanted to change our name, we would simply do person dot the key, which is name, and assign it a new value. So let's call this person Kevin. And now when we type person, it will give us a new object with Kevin. If we want to add a new key to the object, we do person dot the name of this key, so let's do location, equals NYC. Now when we type person, it will give us the name, hair color, nice, and with the newly added location at the end. Let's say we don't want to add our location to our object and we want to delete something from the object. We would do delete person dot location. And now we would type person, and this would give us back to the beginning of our object with just the 3 keys and the values. Now you'll notice in my last JavaScript object that the last key has a value of true, and true isn't a string. It's actually something called a Boolean, which is another type of data. Now if this was surrounded by quotes, it would be a string and would have no value outside of being a string. And we also have false. Another type of data is called null, which basically means a lack of value. And we also have undefined, which means a variable hasn't been declared or initialized. It's not been given a value. There's a slight difference between these two, and as an example, let's do var test equals 2 plus 0. This gives us 2. Now if we were to do the same thing, this time with null, it would give us 2 as well. Now let's try it with undefined. We would get nan, which means not a number. And this is because we can't actually add to something that hasn't been declared or isn't there yet. It hasn't been given a value. And that's the basics of the different types of data that we have.